You and your preschoolers love using natural loose parts. They might mash up flower petals or crunch leaves and mix them into potions. They might rake up those fall leaves and build nests or just jump in the piles. They might blow dandelions or sort seeds. That was then. Now winter is coming and the trees are bare and the ground is cold and hard. Well, if you're lucky, because the ground might be cold and wet and mushy and a mud pile, and kids have their hands wrapped up in mittens, so it might be difficult for them to grasp objects anyway. So you might think that using natural loose parts has to hibernate in the winter, just like some of the animals. But the truth is, there are plenty of loose parts available in the winter if you know where to look. Hello, I am Nicole Dravillas-Fravel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. And today I am sharing some of my favorite natural loose parts to use in the winter because there's more out there than you might think at first glance. So, first of all, let's talk about our most popular, most versatile loose part, the stick. Sticks are plentiful year round, right? And in fact, they might even be easier to source in the winter when those trees are bare and you can see them, or when the winds, right? When the windstorms blow them to the ground, right? And so not only can children use their imaginations to turn this stick into motorcycles or broomsticks or horses, any variety of pretend play pops. They can also be used as math manipulatives. They can be used in art projects. They can be used as digging tools, right? One of our favorite ways to use sticks this time of year is to channel our inner Peters from the snowy day and to trace pictures in either the snow or the mud, whatever we happen to have that that particular day. Secondly, right, not all trees are bare in the winter. We are lucky enough around here to have a huge number of cedar and spruce trees, and they are still giving us loose parts year round. One of the best is pine cone. Again, a pine cone could be used as a canvas for art. You can paint on it. We like to do a little fine motor process, and when those pine cones are open, right, push the pom-poms into the little spaces that are left. I even come to think of it, these are good for science experiments. Right? Do we know how and when and why pine cones open or close? And again, small math manipulatives. Right? So lastly, don't overlook the weather as a loose part. Right? Our favorite winter loose part, hands down, is snow. Right? Anything that children can do with sand, they can also do with snow. Right? Bring out those molds. They can mold it into different shapes. They can transport it using the large Tonka trucks or just filling buckets and walking it from space to space. Again, it can be a canvas for art, either if children are taking spray bottles with watercolors in them and spraying, or if they just have a paintbrush and they're painting directly onto the snow. It can be used for science experiments, states of matter, right? When does the snow melt? When is it a solid? What about different types of snow? What makes different types of snow better for making snowballs or for sledding or for jumping in? Which, of course, then leads us to ice as another fascinating winter loose part. Where and when does ice form and why? Can you predict what three-dimensional forms, what three-dimensional shapes will form if we pour water into, I don't know, playground cones, uh, bins, garden pots, trays, whatever we have around? Can you predict what three-dimensional shapes you are going to make? What are the different ways to get ice to melt? What substances can we add to it? What variables make it melt slower or faster? One year, we launched into a month-long exploration of ponds, of states of matter, of water in general, just because one child noticed that our rain gauge had a layer of ice at the top. It was frozen at the top, but at the bottom of the rain gauge, it was still liquid, right? So that leads us into, right, where do those pond animals go in the winter and why are they not frozen in the ice? Another way to look at ice, right, another thing that fascinates us is either bubbles that form in ice. Why and how does that happen? Or when different types of nature gets frozen in the ice, and then we like to make our own art with frozen nature in it, where we arrange nature in a very thin pie plate, pour a very thin layer of water over it, um, let it freeze, and then we can hang it up. So maybe you are not lucky enough to have snow and ice as part of winter. I mean, honestly, here it is much more likely to be rainy and windy in the winter than for us to get a ton of snow. But rain and wind is also fascinating loose parts. We like to make them partners in art that we can make. So if we sprinkle powdered tempera on a piece of paper and bring it out into the rain and let the rain dissolve the powder and help us create our art. Or similarly, we like to let the wind push our paintbrush or our marker around the paper to create the marks. And yes, we even use mud as a loose part. I mean, that's not as far out there, right? I mean, if you have a mud kitchen, you're using mud as a loose part. But we also allow the children to use the mud similar to clay so that we can mold and sculpt it. And then we could also sift it, dry it, look at the different components that are in soil. So as you can see, loose parts do not hibernate in the winter. You still have plenty to use, right? Whatever you can find, whether that's gifts from evergreen trees, whether that's a bunch of sticks, whether that's being open to using the mud, whether that's thinking about the weather as a loose part. Be creative, follow your children's lead, and you will find them outside in the winter. And if this interests you and you want to make sure that you are still teaching with nature throughout the winter, then look forward to something I am calling 10 for 10. And that is 10 different, very short, very discrete trainings on one subject apiece, right? So one of them is just on starting and maintaining a school garden. One of them is on simple things that you can do on a walk with children. Um, One of them is on different literacy activities that you can do outside. So very discreet, and they are all going to be offered at $10 a piece. That's the 10 for 10 piece. There will be a price break if you choose to purchase the whole bundle of 10. But I'm very excited about this because I want to give you practical strategies for getting outside. Easy things that you can do, that you can look at the training and implement it right away the very next day. So look for that coming down the pike. And then join me here next week when I will be talking about Lev Vygotsky and how his zone of proximal development relates to nature-based preschool. I will see you there.